I know from personal experience it can be tough to transition from a student nurse to a professional nurse. I remember when I started my first job in the emergency room, and I sat there twiddling my thumbs because I still had not successfully gotten an IV in and I was about to hit the ground running. Little did I know that there was such a thing as nurse residencies. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about HCA Healthcare's nurse residency program. This program supports newly graduating nursing students at the early stages of their careers. HCA Healthcare's year-long nurse residency program helps first-year nurses transition from the classroom to working in the field with confidence. Plus, nursing residents get access to a range of opportunities to learn from specialists in various areas, such as ER, critical care ICU, and surgical services. And there's a variety of other great benefits. Learn more today at careers.hcahealthcare.com/residency. Again, that's careers.hcahealthcare.com/residency. HCA Healthcare is an equal opportunity employer.
Welcome to the Nurse Leader Network podcast with your host, Chris Racinos. Wherever you're going on your nurse leader journey, we're here to help you get there.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nurse Leader Network podcast. I'm your host, Chris Racinos. So I have a special guest today that I think is going to be right up our alley. We are in the middle of a pandemic. It is, we've had a really tumultuous election. We are not out of it. We've had just a lot of social unrest. There's so much going on in the United States and in the world. And as we look towards planning, this is kind of our second part of, what do we want to do with our 2021? Where do we want to take it? Where do we want to go? There's a really great I like to call it kind of like an RX around how to really help us get through the pandemic, stress, just things that we're going through. And it's gratitude. And we have brought a world famous person to come and talk to us today about gratitude, what she's learned about it, how we can apply it to our lives every day. I'd like to introduce you to Linda Burton, who is an executive coach. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. Well, there's no problem doing that. You mentioned I am an executive coach, and my coaching methodologies are really based on the research and evidence-based practices in positive psychology, neuroscience, and certainly gratitude being a part of the positive psychology science. And interestingly, I've been fortunate to work. About 85% of my work is with nurse leaders, nursing teams. And, I often say I've got the best job in the world because I'm connecting with people that I absolutely admire. And I think I get as much or perhaps more out of working with my clients than they do. But I think it's kind of even.
Wow. Tell me your story about how did you become an executive coach? What was it? How'd you end up here?
Yeah, I was working in a career coaching firm, and I decided that I could do something better on my own. How about that? And and so I really started to take a look at what the coaching certifications were, what were the schools out there, what were the programs. And of course, I followed the guidelines from the International Coach Federation, the ICF. And there are different certifications that people can go for, and there are different programs that allow you to come into the coaching in different ways. So I came into it, and the process is that you have a course, you study, you select your focus point. So I selected neuro leadership coaching and went through that process. Then I passed what I thought was a very difficult and rigorous exam with the ICF. And that also included a log of coaching hours. So I had a mentor coach. I coached people to build up my coaching log. And at the same time, I started to connect with some individuals at an academic medical center who were looking to bring the work in positive psychology to the nursing units to really strengthen the culture of the nursing unit, to have it become values-based, to empower nurses, and ultimately impact their engagement and the satisfaction of their patients. And from there, I have just really enjoyed staying in the healthcare arena. Maybe that's not a good term these days, but in healthcare, and a true love for my clients that have dedicated themselves to the profession of nursing.
Well, I gotta say, nursing is awesome. So I'll say woot woot with you there. But you mentioned a term. You said positive psychology. Help me understand what that is.
Yeah. Well, it's a science, and it's been around now for about 25 years. When it first hit mainstream, Chris, there was a lot of misunderstanding. Sometimes it seems like if you stick the word positive on anything, it feels woo-woo, it feels soft and squishy. But there's real science behind it, and the work that is done has a tremendous amount of research, empirical evidence, and positive psychology is the most common definition is the scientific study of how our strengths enable individuals and communities and institutions to thrive. So it's a very holistic well-being approach. Sometimes it conjures up these smiley faces and just be happy slogans, and it is complementary to traditional psychology. And so what I often explain is, just as good health is not just the absence of disease, positive psychology is not the absence of pain and suffering. So there's nothing about the science that says ignore the negatives or don't think of negative things. It's quite the contrary. It's how do we bring the best of ourselves to manage whatever challenges we have. And the focus is on a very holistic approach. So our physical, our mental, emotional, spiritual well-being is all of who we are. So why not take all of that and include that in how we live a very satisfying and happy life and get through the difficulties. And so one of the strengths of positive psychology is gratitude. And when I started to bring the gratitude research, which really started about the same time, but it's now done around the world, when I started to bring the gratitude research into my coaching practice, I actually started practicing gratitude, which is interesting because I never thought of myself as being ungrateful. But what happened at that same time, and I guess they say things happen for a reason, I lost my younger sister, Debbie, at the age of 41 to breast cancer. And there was a rolling loss after that. My mom passed away. My dad passed away. And I was really in this loop of grief that when I even journaled about it, I kept myself stuck there. Sometimes there's healing in that, but I wasn't finding it. And it was this aha moment that I looked back over my past journal entries to Debbie and saw how dark they were and how it was all about what I lost and what she lost and the children lost. And honestly, the neuroplasticity that we know allows us to change the brain pathways is what happened to me. With my practice, I was able to reframe. And I honestly, I sat and cried when I realized that what the science is telling us is actually what I experienced. And the term gratitude heals came to me. And so there my journey started. And I am executive coaching, but where individuals want to learn more about the science, I bring that into the coaching. I do a lot of writing. I published Gratitude Heals, a journal, last year. And I'm working on an ebook for early next year about how gratitude is going to support us through the pandemic. And so it's I feel like I'm almost on a mission, and I'm just so excited that you're giving me this opportunity to share what I know with your audience and with you.
Wow, I'm almost like speechless. I didn't know that about your story, and so I mean, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry. I know my listeners and you know about my story and how I lost my daughter, and I agree with
Yes.
you. When you lose somebody that close, or even I've even seen it with animals and pets, you really go into a dark place where it's really, you like hit the nail on the head. It really was a sense of not being able to appreciate all that I was grateful for while she was living, and all that has been born since her passing, as a result of her passing. And
Right.
so I think you really made a very salient point around how gratitude really can change your mindset. What is one thing, or how do you get started when you're so stuck? I mean, we have nurses that are still without PPE 10 months into this. We're going into a year soon. We have nurses that don't have enough supplies. We have managers that can't find the nurses because there's just not enough of them. I mean, how do you even begin to
Yeah.
get out and practice gratitude when so many things are just not going the right way?
Great question. And I approach this from several ways. In fact, I just had a conversation this morning with a nurse who was with a patient that was dying from COVID, and she was holding up the iPad so that the family members could say goodbye. And I was beyond words. And so I think when we are suffering, and my condolences again to you and your loss, but when we are suffering, it might be impossible to get to gratitude. And to that I say, okay, be good to yourself. Do not in any way feel like you should or you have to. And sometimes it starts with 2 minutes. I would sit on the edge of the bathtub, sit on your back deck, sit on your basement steps where you are able to just create some space for 2 minutes before you get back into the environment or whatever that is. Because I was listening to a speech the other day, and they were stressing, think of the messages that we're hearing. We're hearing that we're fighting a war on COVID, that we're sending people to the front line, that we're fighting to save lives, and that the enemy is invisible. So when you think of these messages, the fear response of the brain is highly engaged. We go into a survival mode. And that prolonged amount of stress and anxiety and fear has detrimental effects on our cardiovascular health. But also think about the relationships that we have around us that we can't appreciate. We feel that sometimes people don't understand us because of where we are and what we're feeling. So I nurses don't take as good care of themselves often as they care for their patients. But I ask everyone to find 2 minutes, and we can build from there. And one of the other obstacles with practicing gratitude is 24/7 distractions. And so we may think, gosh, Chris really helped me today. I want to make sure I let her know how much I appreciated that. But then we might find ourselves cooking dinner that night or grabbing a bite somewhere, and we think, oh, I forgot to say that to her. And the intention is there, but we're distracted. And in nursing today, your profession was already at what, a 34% burnout rate pre-COVID. So that space, I think that's the best way. If we know that we are hearing these messages of fear, that our brain is responding the way it's supposed to protect us, that we have to create things in our environment that allow us to reframe, cognitively reappraise something, and be kind to ourselves. I often tell people to put their hand over their heart when they are in that 2-minute space, or when they are practicing gratitude verbally or writing it down, because there's a very strong connection. So it is, I think people say, well, I say thank you, and that isn't that being grateful. Well, yes, and one of the studies that I read out of the John Templeton Foundation discovered that we have a gratitude gap. This is before the pandemic. And that most people think they're grateful, but only about 54% of the women and 48% of the men actually express it for a variety of reasons. Age, gender, where they are in life. And so to close that gap, they actually thought, half of them thought it would make a huge difference in society around the world. So there's so much research, there's so much wonderful work to apply to how it creates greater health and well-being for the individual, and what we're seeing happen in organizations today that consider it a core value of their culture.
Wow. How do, let's say, okay, I'm on this journey. I'm now making that space for that few minutes a day. I'm sitting, on my step or on my bed.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do in that 2 minutes? What do you do in that 2 minutes? How do you use it?
Yeah, right. There's a couple of approaches. One is, what are your eyes looking at the moment? Where are your eyes? What are your eyes capturing? And what in your range of sight can you be grateful for? It can be something very simple, right? That I have the light on, right? I have the warmth and comfort of my bed. It can be as the most, I guess, one of the very first gratitude practices was 3 good things. And that is to consider 3 good things that happened to you during the day and what caused them. And in that reflection, where do you find gratitude? And so positive psychology used that for one of their very first research studies. And Duke Medical Center actually, Brian Sexton, if you know of his work, looked at 3 good things as a practice technique for the ICU staff. And so they did pre and post assessments, and they realized that those that practiced 3 good things about 2 hours before they went to sleep at night slept better, woke up feeling better, and their emotional exhaustion scores decreased from the beginning of the practice to, I guess it was 3 weeks after they started practicing. So we also think about energy. We put energy out. And so where does our energy go? We know when we feel good energy, what in that energy can we feel grateful for? And so it can be as small or as significant as you feel. The important thing is not to be grateful for something that you have that someone else does not. That, in fact, is not gratitude. That is really missing the point, if you will, that you have benefited in some way by something good in your life. And it goes against the science to think about that you have something better than somebody else does, and that goes into a whole another conversation. But that's the most common definition that you see in the literature, is that gratitude is an affirmation of goodness and a recognition of goodness outside of ourselves. So I gave you maybe too much, but
No, I think it was
starting
just,
small.
I think it was just, and I think that was great. And I honestly had no clue about when you're reflecting on gratitude, reflecting on things that you have that others don't. That's pretty powerful. I have my kids ever since my daughter passed away. I had my other kids an effort to try because I had learned about gratitude and wanted to help them cope, and I wanted to help them begin to feel better. And so I asked them every single morning on the way to school when we used to go to school in person,
Yeah,
and
right.
now as they're brushing their teeth, I want to know what you're thankful for. And so we say thankful. And I always ask them, to tell me a person that they're thankful for and why, a place they're thankful for and why, and then a thing. And that thing can be, whatever. And it was really interesting. One day, my 9-year-old son, he was actually 8 at the time. He tells me, Mom, the person I'm thankful for is the gardener who mows the lawn at my school because he makes our school look really beautiful, and I know he works really hard for us, and it's just nice to be able to roll on the floor and the grass. And he said the place I'm thankful for is the universe because I get to be a part of it. And then he goes, the thing I'm grateful for is oxygen because I'd be dead without it.
Oh,
and I was like I was
oh,
like,
Chris.
wow. So he was just so reflective, and they continue to be very, even in their young age, really reflective of things outside of
Wow.
what they're thankful for. And I can see how it changes. And I've even applied it to work. So, I've had times where I just have 2 employees that are just conflicting, right? They can't stand each other. They can't seem to get along.
Oh, yeah.
And I make them, we sit down and have a conversation, and I really challenge them to share what they are grateful about in the other person, because sometimes they get so
Yeah.
jaded that they just can't see anything good about them, but that everybody has something good about them. And
You got
so,
it.
that's been a great way to kind of help resolve conflict in the workplace, is really, let's talk about what we are grateful for. And then let's talk about what our needs are with each other. And so I like, though, that you said not things, because one thing my other son likes to say he's thankful for is his PlayStation. And so,
Right.
that's really interesting. It's an interesting perspective. I love it.
Oh, I just love what you are bringing into your children's lives. It's never going to leave them. And the universe and the gardener, I'm blown away by it. But you know what that reminds me of? One of the obstacles to expressing gratitude is it makes some people feel very vulnerable, and they don't like that. And my homework assignment for them is to think of the invisible people that they walk past every day. We all do. And you don't sign their paycheck, you don't do their performance evaluation, but you know that they contribute to the overall community, institution, whatever. And stop and tell them that you do appreciate what they do, because 2 things happen. One is that individual posture will most likely change. They'll look at you in the eye, and you will feel the difference that your comment has made to them, and you will feel different by what you have just experienced. And there's nothing soft about that whatsoever. And so there's a myth that if you express your appreciation too much, if you express gratitude too often, people become complacent. That is not at all true. And I know you've seen that many, many times in your personal and professional life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a group of folks that I realized began to feel forgotten, and it was all of the nurses that and the staff that were displaced to have to do the screening. So when all of COVID hit, all of the hospitals and clinics and everything locked down, and we had to have screeners that took temperatures and asked, the questions about infection and all of this. And these nurses, I think, and staff were really number one, fearful, right? They didn't know if they had the correct PPE. They didn't know who had what. And then they were being verbally abused every single day by people who just wanted to get to work, or who were running late,
Mm-hmm.
or who were running late to an appointment. And so I think,
Mm.
as you're sharing, the people that you walk by every day, we all as a leadership team made it a huge point to really recognize them, because they had one of the hardest
Ah,
jobs, in the world. And we
yeah.
forget, like, it's a nuance to us that we have to stop and, can't rush in and have to wait in
Mm-hmm.
line.
Mm-hmm.
Yet not realizing they're doing us a favor. They're keeping us safe.
Yes. Yes. And that it takes that we have to slow down with that. So Daniel Kahneman has a book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and he talks about the fast brain, which is what we use 80% of the time. We make quick decisions. Clinically, your fast brain engages. We make quick decisions. We base our decisions on what we've done in the past. Sometimes it works very well. Sometimes maybe not so well. And then we have the slow brain, which takes a deliberate thought process. And that's where I think we need to engage with gratitude, because I have a prescription for people that are trying to express gratitude, because I have often stared at thank you notes and can't think of a darn word to say. And so I think of recommending that somebody think of a person or an experience or an act of kindness or generosity that you have a positive connection with, and to think about what they did that you benefited. How did you benefit? Why was that meaningful? And perhaps what were their intentions or possible sacrifices that they made? And that way you are slowing your brain down. You're deliberately thinking about what we would quickly brush aside. And nurses do this often. If you thank them, the refrain is, I'm just doing my job. Yes, you are. And we need to be very deliberate in how we express gratitude, because we have these wonderful mirror neurons in our brain. And so when I get this feeling of elation when somebody's done something for me and I'm feeling that gratitude, that is mirrored by the person that I'm interfacing with. So many good things that come out of it, that if we slow down enough, we can appreciate what we appreciate. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I hear from a lot of nurses is like when their administration tries to express gratitude, it's just not what they're looking for. So I see memes on like Instagram, and, they all kind of joke about the beloved pizza parties that are thrown for nurses for whatever reasons, right? Maybe you didn't get a break, or maybe you were celebrating some metrics or whatever. What do you see in your practice that really contributes to the nurses really feeling appreciated? Like, what is it that you see that they need?
Well, feeding them is very good. However, it's short-lived, is it not? It has to be direct communication. For someone to express gratitude to us for what nurses are doing today, it needs to come directly. It needs to come from the heart. And it needs to have the time set aside in order to do that. Now I realize it's a very busy place. And I think it's imperative for leaders to somehow find a way to make that connection. If they're rounding, there needs to be some sort of habit that leaders form, to really be able to have a connection with as many people directly as possible. And if you can't do it face to face because just of what's happening today on the units, it has to be, it can be in writing. It can be a phone call. It can be a text message. Ideally, it would be face to face, but let's deal with the precautions that we need to deal with. But that one-on-one connection in any way is going to make a nurse feel cared for, that you see me, that I matter. There's a fundamental need every human being to know their existence matters. And at times of crises, it's even more important to go above and beyond what we need to do. So does it take more time, perhaps, for a leader? Yes. But what you have in return is tenfold. It's tenfold.
Yeah, I would agree. And one way that I would get to know my staff is every time I rounded any unit, we do have a little quick huddle, even if it was just one or two nurses. And I'd always ask them, their name and then ask them to share a fun fact with me. And I'd always share a fun fact with them about me. So, I'd share things that were like kind of fun, like I could roller skate backwards, or I have, like 15 like, please don't let the animal control hear this. But so, I would share something like that. And then I would ask them to share something like that with me, something I couldn't find in their resume, something I wouldn't, that people maybe on the unit wouldn't know, like share a fun fact. And that always helped me, number one, remember them. But then I could always go back to it, right? So if they share that they loved cooking, I would, next time I'd come up and I'd ask them like, hey, what's the latest great recipe you've had? And would you share it with me? Or, if they shared that they, are into dancing, I'd ask, like, hey, when was the last time you had a so it was a good way to not only remember like hundreds of people in a very short time, but really connect with them about things that were very meaningful to them.
Wow, what a leader. Yes, you made time for your staff. And they felt it. They had to have felt it, and they'll remember you forever just because of that attention that you gave them. That's beautiful.
It's a fun thing. It's a really fun thing. So,
well, and we do want to have fun. We still want to be able to laugh and let down our guard a little bit and tell a funny joke. And not everybody can do it at every moment, but if we have that ability to share a happy story, a funny story, then that is another way of just getting some space in how we're thinking and looking at things.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Linda, you are also an author. So you have a book that you've written. Would you like to tell us a little about it?
Yeah, thank you. And the title is Gratitude Heals, a journal for inspiration and guidance. So it is a journal, but the content there goes into the description of the science of positive psychology, the work in gratitude, and the neuroscience, the connection with neuroscience. And then there are some tips about using the journal. There are prompts throughout the journal because sometimes we get stuck. And then in the back, there are resources. There's some templates to help get the journaling started. And, you can pick it up. The one thing about journaling that I hope people understand is that you have the best of intentions of journaling, and then life gets in the way, and then you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm no good at journaling. Well, just pick it up again and start all over. There's research that shows you don't need to do it every day of the week. In fact, if you try to do it 5, 6, 7 days a week, it becomes a chore. It does not give you the lasting health impacts that journaling up to 3 times a week can give you. And so that journal also includes a gratitude letter template, and the gratitude letter is actually something that's considered one of the most meaningful ways to practice gratitude. Now, the night my sister passed away, I sat at her desk and I wrote what I now know was a gratitude letter. And I'm sorry I didn't write it and read it to her before she passed. And so a message, if you will, is don't wait. And the key to the gratitude letter is that you write it to someone who's special, who's made a difference in your life. And instead of mailing it, instead of emailing it, you read it to them. So now we probably would have to do that on the phone. We could social distance. And the impact is, it's amazing, because it's one thing to be able to share that with someone, and then the person you share it with realizes things that maybe they never realized before. And if that person has passed away, still read the letter. Read it to someone that knows you very well or knew that person. It still has the same healing impact. And so there's that template. You don't need that template, but it's that template, and also asks you who is this person, when will you do it, and how will you set the date to do that. And so it's one of the best ways. There was a study done at a university, Chris, where the students came to the campus counseling center and wanted mental health assistance. And half of them agreed, well, some of them agreed to do this gratitude research, and some of them elected not to. And the students that wrote gratitude letters, one letter for 3 weeks, came back 12 weeks later and had improved mental health symptoms. And the group that did not move their mental health scores. Then they brought those students back 3 months later and had them do a gratitude experiment. They were giving someone, an unknown person in this experiment, money. They shared more money than the people that didn't do the gratitude letters, and they had higher activation in several regions of their brain that are associated with fairness and moral cognition and the perspective of others. So the science to me is amazing. We have all of these different studies, but the lasting impact is really kind of what got me, that there is something here, and we can each take it and do what we can in our own lives and in the lives of our loved ones and coworkers.
Wow. So my listeners are listeners of action, and I am going to challenge these listeners to take that recommendation and to write that letter tonight and to read it in the next 24 hours, guys. That is my challenge to you.
Wonderful.
Linda, if they want to find your book, where can they find it?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
It's on sale for $9.95. Bulk orders get a volume discount. I do believe you can get them in Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. Some of them have it. Some of them will order it for you. So there's a couple of ways of getting that.
Great. And if folks are interested in learning more about you and more about your work as an executive coach, where can they find you?
They can find me at my website, which is DRW Coaching. And DRW were my sister's initials. So I have her with me today.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh.
I do. Yeah, DRW Coaching. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Instagram and Twitter.
What's your Instagram handle?
LR Burton.
Okay.
Yeah, LR Burton.
And then
Twitter is at LR Burton.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate so much all of the time and the wisdom that you have given us today. This has been a great session. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Chris, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this tremendously. I wish you the best of luck, and I know we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, Linda.
Take care.